Now I want to take a quick look at a topical study. That is where you choose a subject in the Bible, then find different places that speak to the subject. But rather than give you the nuts and bolts of doing a topical study, let me first give you an example of one. In every video we've heard about being saved. We've seen that it was Jesus' mission to save the world. In our word study, we saw that the Greek word can mean save, rescue, deliver, and heal. Before I received the Lord into my life, I didn't think I needed to be saved from anything. I was a typical American 70s kid. I didn't have much, but life was okay. What did I need saving from? No one wants to hear my opinion. What does the Bible say? Remember in our second study, Navigating the Bible, we learned to locate John 3:16. For God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten Son, that whosoever believes in him should not perish but have everlasting life. This verse encapsulates the kind of relationship God wants to have with us, one of love. But for some odd reason, he felt compelled to give his only begotten Son to die for us. In the Bible, relationships are founded on what are called covenants. The closest thing we have today to compare to a covenant is marriage. A covenant can be between a man and a woman, like marriage, or two men and even two women, or two or more leaders of tribes, nations, or people groups. Covenants are not contracts or partnerships. In legal terms, they may be similar. Biblically, they are very different. A covenant is much stronger. In its earliest form, it was called a blood covenant. This is where two people would share each other's blood. I know, it sounds disgusting. They become blood brothers. We think of blood brothers as a relative or a sibling. In covenant talk, a blood brother was closer than a sibling. As a kid, I remember pricking my finger and blood would come from it, and me and a friend, we would rub the blood of our fingers together and we'd be blood brothers. That's kind of the same thing. Today we see shadows of the old blood covenant ritual in our social life. Most notably, a handshake. Yep. The two men would cut the palms of their hands and join their hands together, and the blood would combine in their hands. In early days, a man's handshake was his bond. It was an oath. This comes from the blood covenant. Even a hug is a shadow of the blood covenant. An incision would be made on the upper chest, and the two would embrace, and the blood of the chest would meet. Even a cheek-to-cheek kiss. We don't see that much today in America, but it's very popular in Europe. A cut would be made on the cheek of each other, and they'd press them together, where the blood would run together. Some arguments would be resolved over a drink. Wait, what? How's that? Are you encouraging us to be drinking? No, but stick with me. Think of the ritual with a handshake, with the palms cut. A cup of wine or beer would be placed under the hands and catch the drops of blood. Then the two would share in this cup. They would drink the blood in the beer and the wine. Just having a drink together today is actually vestiges of a blood covenant relationship, where the blood of one would flow also in the body of another. They would be considered closer than actual family members. Many have heard the phrase, blood is thicker than water. Most think that a blood relative or sibling is closer than a friend because they're family. The actual meaning is completely the opposite. My blood brother by covenant, where we've shared each other's blood, is closer than my sibling born of my mother's placental water. Blood brother is thicker than my sibling water brother. What does this have to do with God's love for the world? We have to go back to the first book in the Bible, Genesis, the 3rd chapter. Adam and Eve, our first parents, lived in the wonderful Garden of Eden. The Lord told them they could eat of any plant in the garden except one, the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. The short story is, they did eat of it, and God expelled them from the garden. The garden represents a perfect relationship with the Lord, daily walking and talking to Him, having all of our needs met, and in full health. When Adam disobeyed, he broke that relationship. His punishment was being expelled from the garden. He'd have to work for his own food. Eve would have pain for childbearing, and from that moment, they began to die. Just like them, each of us are closer to death each day. That's a happy thought, isn't it? Yeah, I thought so too. This is called the original sin, or the rebellious nature. As they were leaving the garden, the Lord stopped and made coverings of skin for both of them. An animal, probably a lamb or young goat, was offered. Its blood poured out. Adam and Eve had never seen death before. And from the skins of the offering, covering clothes were made for them. Every time they looked at their clothes or saw an animal die, they were reminded of what they left behind, the cost of their disobedience, and hope for the day that they would return to paradise. Jesus came to save us from that, the original sin nature, to remove the guilt of all of our disobedience, free us from the shackles of our wrongdoing, to restore our fellowship with Him, to raise our faces from our own shame and bring us back into the garden to walk and talk with Him. For God so loved the world that He gave His only begotten Son to redeem us from our sin. Jesus is our perfect Lamb. He lived a sinless life, yet He died in our place on the cross. He established a new covenant with us, not based on the blood of lambs, bulls, or goats, but on His own sinless life. To prove that His offering was enough, He was buried in a tomb, and 3 days later, He rose from the dead. If you believe this, that He died on the cross for your sin and rose from the dead 3 days later, all you have to do is say it to the Lord and ask Him to come into your life. Then you too will be born again and walk in newness of life. This is the new covenant between you and God. You have been rescued from the darkness around and brought into His new light, delivered from the chaos of this world to inherit His kingdom. You can be healed. You're saved. No more sneaking around like Nicodemus trying to find Jesus. Now you can walk in the day with Him. If you confess and believe that Jesus died for you, was buried, and rose on the third day for your salvation, you are saved and born again. You have a new way of life. I'd love to hear from you. Please send an email to drfritz@live.com. It is true that Jesus did come to save, rescue, deliver, and heal the world. Finding out what exactly that means to you and me are part of this great adventure we've begun. There are many other powerful revelations like this that will inspire you. Jesus bless you in your adventure into His Word.